The fog in Briar Falls came early that autumn, curling between the pines like smoke from an unseen fire. Mornings were pale and quiet. Only the wind through the leaves broke the silence. Eli Mercer's mail truck rumbled down the cracked country road, its headlights cutting twin beams through the mist. He had driven this route for almost 10 years, 20 miles of scattered farmhouses, half-abandoned cabins, and long-forgotten families still hanging on that edge of the woods. The mailboxes were crooked, dented, and sometimes nameless. Eli knew each single box by memory. He delivered their bills, their letters, their loneliness. But lately, new mail had begun to appear. Not in the sorting office, not on his truck in the morning. They were simply just there, slipped between the others, wrapped in parchment instead of envelopes, sealed with red wax stamped with a cross he didn't recognize. The names? They were wrong too. Miss Clara Vaughan, deceased, 1958. Reverend Elias Kane, Cathedral Grounds, Lot 7. To the keeper beneath St. Ashwin. Eli turned those letters over and over in his hands each morning, confused and uneasy. He asked at the post office in town, but old Miss Farnell, who ran the place, just squinted at him. "Never seen those before. Probably just some prankster. Just toss 'em." But he couldn't. Something in him refused. The idea of undelivered mail gnawed at him. His father had been a postman too. Neither rain nor sleet nor dead of night, he'd always say. And so, one morning, Eli decided to deliver one. He picked the least strange address, Clara Vaughan, Route 6, Box 12, a dilapidated farmhouse at the edge of the Briar Hollows woods. The windows were dark, shutters hanging loose, and the mailbox leaned like a broken tooth. He shut the truck off, the silence rushing in around him. Crickets, wind, the ticking of the engine, cooling. Eli stepped out, boots crunching gravel. He placed the letter in the rusted box, hesitated, and then lifted the red flag. A sound came from the house. Not movement, not footsteps, but something like breathing, slow, wet, and ragged. He froze in place. The curtain fluttered in the window. He thought he saw a shape. Tall, narrow, moving backward through the dark. The air thickened with the smell of soil and rot. Eli backed away, climbed into his truck, and drove off, the tires spitting mud as the fog swallowed the road behind him. That night, he dreamed of letters falling from a black sky, red wax seals cracking like open wounds. Mr. Henrik found him the next morning at the diner, pale and jumpy over a cup of coffee gone cold. "Boy," Henrik said, sliding into the booth opposite. His voice was low and gruff, like gravel under boots. "You've been delivering where you shouldn't have." Eli blinked. "How'd you—" Henrik just smirked. 65 years old, ex-military. Silver hair cropped close, a face carved with scars. Time didn't bother to heal. He had a way of knowing things nobody told him. "The Vaughn place," Henrik continued. "You left something there last night." "It's just mail. Someone slipped it in my bag." Henrik leaned forward. "Don't you ever deliver anything stamped with that cross again. You hear me?" Eli frowned. "You know what it is." Henrik's eyes drifted to the window, to the church steeple barely visible through the fog. "Something that should have stayed buried beneath St. Ashwin." That evening, Eli couldn't shake the unease. The air itself felt wrong, colder, heavy. His route took him past the old church again. It stood empty, its roof sagging, the cross above the steeple blackened with age. Locals said it had been built atop the remains of an old cathedral, one that burned before the town even had a name. As he passed, something caught his eye. A letter nailed to the church door, the same wax seal, the same sigil, and beneath it, his own name. Eli Mercer, post carrier, Route 6. The letter pulsed faintly as if it were breathing. He ripped it down, heart pounding. The parchment was ice cold. He tore it open before he could think. Inside was a single sentence, written in an elegant hand. The keeper stirs. Deliverance will be required. Eli dropped it. The words bled across the page like ink in water. A sound echoed from behind the church, a deep groan, like timbers shifting. Then another. Then silence. He backed away slowly, got in his truck, and drove straight to Mr. Henrik's house. Mr. Henrik lived on the edge of town, in a converted barn surrounded by old military crates and rusted tools. When Eli arrived, the old man was outside sharpening a blade that didn't belong to any ordinary knife. He didn't look surprised. "You opened it." Eli swallowed hard. "You knew I would." Henrik wiped the blade clean. "You're not the first to get those letters. They're not mail, Eli. They're invitations." "To what?" Henrik met his eyes. "To hunt." He led Eli inside, where the walls were lined with relics, crucifixes, silver bullets, jars of salt, and what looked like animal bones carved with runes. The air smelled of oil and iron. "This town," Henrik said, "was built on bones. The bones of St. Ashwin's Cathedral. It was a prison for something old, something we sealed generations ago. When the cathedral burned, we thought it was over." "We?" Henrik's gaze was distant. "Men like me. Hunters. We did the government's dirty work back in the day. Things they don't print in the papers. Monster eradication, they called it. But what sleeps beneath this town, it ain't dead. Just waiting." Eli stared at him. "And these letters?" "They're how it calls for help. How it lures in the willing. Once you deliver one, you're marked." The words sank in like stones. "A sword." Henrik turned, opened a wooden chest, and lifted out a long, cloth-wrapped object. He set it on the table, unrolled it slowly. "A sword?" Old, heavy, engraved with Latin prayers along the blade. The metal shimmered faintly, alive in the lamplight. "This," Henrik said softly, "belonged to a man named Van Helsing. My grandfather." Eli stared at the weapon, unable to speak. Wait a second. You mean the Van Helsing? I always thought those were just bedtime stories." "Well, now you know they're not." Henrik nodded. "Looks like you've inherited this line of work now." That night, Eli dreamt of the farmhouse again, but this time, he wasn't outside. He was inside. The walls bled through the paper. The ceiling bulged, breathing like a lung. In the corner, the shadow of a woman stretched too tall, her mouth opening wider than her face. She whispered his name through a throat full of dirt. When he woke, the phone was ringing. It was Mrs. Farnell from the post office. Her voice trembled. Eli, someone dropped off a package for you. No return address. And it's humming. The package sat on the counter when he arrived, wrapped in brown paper, sealed with that same red wax. It vibrated faintly, like something alive inside of it. Eli picked it up, and the lights flickered. He tore it open. Inside was a stack of letters, all addressed to him, and beneath them, a small brass key, tagged St. Ashman's Crypt. The room went cold, the air shimmered, and then he saw it, reflected in the window behind him. A figure, tall, shrouded in darkness, its limbs impossibly long, face a blur of shadow and teeth, the wraith from his dreams, from the farmhouse. It moved with a jerking, insect-like grace, dragging something behind it. A chain? Or perhaps a spinal cord. Its body dripped black liquid that hissed as it hit the floor. Eli stumbled backwards. The creature turned its faceless head towards him, mouth splitting open to reveal rows of needle-like teeth spiraling inwards. A whisper clawed into his mind. Deliverance. He grabbed the nearest thing, the brass key, and flung it at the thing. The moment it struck, the air cracked like thunder. The wraith shrieked, a sound of rust and wind and blood. It folded inward, limbs twisting, vanishing into the dark. Eli stood, shaking, the hum of the package gone. By dawn, he was at Henrik's door again. The old man opened it, already dressed, sword slung across his back. "I heard it," he said quietly. "You said it was sealed," Eli whispered. Henrik's eyes were grim. "Not anymore." He handed Eli a small pouch, salt, silver dust, a charm shaped like winged cross. "Your route just got a lot more dangerous, boy. And you can't quit now. You've been chosen." Eli stared at him, hollow-eyed. Chosen for what? Henrik smiled without humor. "To deliver the last message." Outside, the church bell tolled once, low and hollow. Though the bell had been missing for 50 years, the fog began to rise again. And as Eli looked toward the sound, he saw the faint outline of the old cathedral beneath the earth, pulsing faintly in the dawn light, like something alive was waiting to be unearthed. The fog never lifted that week. It hung in the trees like a memory that refused to fade. Eli Mercer woke before dawn, sitting at his kitchen table with the blinds drawn. The brass key from the night before lay in front of him, cold and dull. He hadn't slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard the church bell ringing somewhere deep underground, a slow, deliberate sound, as if the town itself had a heartbeat. He hadn't told anyone. Who would believe a mailman hearing phantom bells beneath the dirt? But the silence outside was worse. No birds, no wind, just that thick stillness as if the world were waiting for something. Eli stood, poured another cup of coffee, and stared at the key again. St. Ashwin's Crypt. He didn't want to go back to the church, but he knew he would. At the edge of the town, the church stood like a ruin trying to remember it had once been holy. Its steeple leaned. The windows were webbed with cracks. The door chained shut. The air smelled of wet stone and rust. Eli walked around the side, flashlight trembling in his hand. He found a door half buried by vines. The lock was old, its iron eaten by years, but the brass key slid in smooth, like it had been waiting. The door opened into darkness. Stairs led down, stone steps slick with moss, air heavy with the scent of candle smoke long gone. His light caught carvings on the wall, crosses, Latin prayers, and names gouged so deep they looked like claw marks. He descended slowly. The sound changed with each step, his breathing echoing strangely, as if the walls were swallowing the noise. Then he heard it, ringing of a bell, low, distant, coming from somewhere below. He reached the bottom. The hallway opened into a small crypt lined with alcoves, stone shelves where coffins once rested. In the center stood a bell, blackened and cracked, half melted by fire. A rope hung from it, frayed and motionless. But as he approached, the bell moved, just slightly, enough for dust to fall from its rim. Eli froze, the air thickened, and then something whispered from the dark. "Courier of deliverance." He turned the light toward the sound and saw a figure. A priest, or what was left of one, the skin stretched paper thin, eyes black and wet like oil. Its robes were burned to ash around its bones. It smiled, teeth yellow and too many to count. "You bear the key," it said. "The seal is broken. The mouth awakens." Eli stumbled back. "Stay away from me." The priest's grin widened. "You opened the way. Now the letters will find their addresses." The bell tolled again, deafening this time, vibrating through his bones. Eli bolted up the stairs, the sound following him like a pulse. As he burst through the door into daylight, he saw the fog rolling down the street like a living thing. Somewhere, far off, another bell began to toll and answer. That night, 3 people vanished from Briar Falls. Mrs. Farnell, Sheriff Klein, and a child from the southern farms. The town whispered about disappearances, but Eli knew better. Each missing person had a letter delivered that week, all from his own route, letters he didn't remember handing out. When he went to the post office, the shelves were empty, no mailbags, no logbook, just a faint layer of soot on the counter. He turned slowly, and there, sitting where the outbox should have been, was another envelope. His name again. He didn't open it until nightfall, sitting in his truck on the dirt road outside Mr. Henrik's barn. Inside, the letter was written in black ink that shimmered faintly, like beetle shells in the dark. "The bell calls. Find the passage before the 7th toll, beneath the church, under the stone of the broken saint." He showed it to Henrik. The old man's eyes darkened. "It's starting." He went to a trunk in the corner and pulled out a roll of yellowed paper, a map, brittle and stained. "This was St. Ashwin's Cathedral, before they built over it. There's a catacomb under the nave. They sealed it after the fire. That's where your bell's coming from." Eli frowned. "And what happens if it keeps ringing?" Henrik looked up slowly. "The ground opens. It calls back what was buried." They went together, long after the town's lights went out. Henrik carried the sword slung across his shoulder, and a pack filled with salt, chalk, and flasks of something that smelled like gasoline and sage. Eli carried the flashlight and his shaking nerves. The church door groaned as they entered. Henrik knelt, brushing away dust from the floor. "There," he said, tapping the stone. The tile bore an image of a saint kneeling before an angel, cracked straight down the middle. They pried it up. Beneath was a tunnel. The air that rose from it was cold enough to bite. They climbed down. The catacombs stretched far below, lit only by their lamps, arches upon arches, bones sealed into the walls. Symbols had been painted on the stone, old and smeared, but not by time. Some were still wet. Henrik muttered under his breath, words Eli didn't know, but felt in his bones, prayers or curses. Maybe both. Then the bell tolled again. It came from deeper in. They followed the sound through twisting corridors until they reached a vast circular chamber. The roof was gone, opening into darkness so thick their light couldn't reach it. In the center, the black bell stood on a pedestal of bone, but this one was whole and moving, slowly, rhythmically, as if breathing. Beneath it, a pit, and from that pit, whispering voices, hundreds of them, speaking in a chorus of grief. Eli's flashlight flickered. He turned it and saw faces pressed into the walls. Not carvings, not statues, but actual faces. Eyes rolled, mouths opened and closed, mouthing silent screams. Henrik drew his sword. "Back!" he hissed. "Don't let it see you!" But it was too late. The bell's surface rippled, and from its center something crawled out, a shape like melted flesh, hands too many, bones clicking like insects. Its face was a void. The hollow bell's keeper. It shrieked, a sound like metal tearing through meat. Henrik threw a flask. It shattered against the creature's chest, erupting in pale fire. The thing screamed, stumbling back, its body writhing as the bell above it cracked open. "Salt the edges," Henrik barked. Eli dumped the salt in a trembling circle around the pit, his hands shaking as the creature clawed at the floor. "Why me?" he shouted. "Why is it after me?" Henrik swung the blade, slicing through one of the creature's reaching arms. "Because you opened the door. You're the courier. It marked you when you delivered the first letter." The bell tolled again, shattering half the chamber. Stones rained down. The voices wailed. Henrik plunged the sword into the pit, and light exploded outward. A shockwave of white and gold. Eli was thrown back, hitting the wall hard. When he looked up, the creature was gone. The bell was split in two, molten at the edges. The whispers faded to silence. Henrik slumped to one knee, blood dripping from his nose. "Did we kill it?" Eli asked. Henrik shook his head. "No, we just bought time." He pulled a cloth from his pocket, wiped the blade. "There'll be others. The letters. They're messages from the thing beneath. They're waking its servants one by one." Eli sat against the wall, breathing hard. The salt circle glowed faintly around them. Henrik looked at him, eyes tired, but steady. "You've got a choice now, boy. Keep delivering their mail, or start delivering your own. The kind that puts monsters back in the ground." Eli stared at the cracked bell, its edges smoking. The sound still echoed faintly in his head. Somewhere far above, the church bell tower answered with a single, hollow note. He stood slowly, gripping the hilt of the sword where it lay against the stone. "I think it's time," he said quietly, "to change my route." Henrik gave him a grim smile. "Then welcome to the hunt." As they climbed back toward the surface, the fog thickened around the church again. And deep below, in the pit where the bell had been, something smiled.